Alright, welcome to another drafting tutorial. Today we're going to be doing a drawing that I'm going to be honest with you is probably one of the more difficult drawings I assign in class. And that is the positioning stop. See down here our title, positioning stop. Now this is difficult for a number of reasons. For starters, we'll start with the obvious. It is technically a 4-view drawing. We're not going to draw this part though, so you're only doing a 3-view drawing. This I put on the program just so you can see what this would look like in real life. So we're going to be doing a 3-view drawing. Now we're going to do the front, the top, and the right hand side. Now on a computer this is really easy to do. It's like 2 clicks and you have both these views done. But since we're board drafting, this is going to be a little bit trickier. The other part you might not notice is if we look at the scale, we are not doing a full-size drawing. We're doing a half scale. That means all of these measurements are going to be scaled down. Now this is an important thing you need to understand right now. Otherwise things are going to get confusing. The dimensions listed on this drawing are the real dimensions of the plate. Okay? They're the real dimensions of the plate. The plate in real life would be 8 inches long, half an inch wide, so on and so forth. However, when you draw this, you are going to be using half of all these dimensions. You're going to split these dimensions in half. That's how we get the half scale. So instead of having an 8-inch long drawing here, you're going to have a 4-inch long drawing. So the first thing I want you to do before we do anything else is I want you to take all of these dimensions and I want you to split them in half. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we'll start up here at the top. 8 is an easy one. We cross it out. In our drawing, this is going to be 4 inches. Half an inch. Well, if you take half of a half, we know that that's going to be a 1/4 inch. I want to show you kind of a cool trick that I learned over the years when it comes to dividing fractions. If you take a fraction like 1/2, if you want to find out what half of that fraction is, really easy trick here. All you have to do is multiply the bottom number by 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Keep the top number the same. Half of a half is 1/4. That works with almost any fraction, especially in drafting. So for example, if you want to find half of 3/4, multiply 4 by 2. Keep the top number the same. 3/8. 3/8 is half of 3/4. That is all you need to know for finding half of a fraction. So let's continue on here. 3/4 is also 0.75. This is something that you should probably do as well if you're a little iffy on fractions and decimals. I like to write a reminder on the side of what common fractions are as decimals. So for example, 0.75, that's 3/4. 0.25, that's 1/4. 0.5, that's a half. 0.375, that's actually 3/8. It wouldn't hurt to write down this as a reminder to yourself. It looks like in this drawing the only ones we're really going to be dealing with is 3/4 and a half. So that makes things easy. So 2 and 3/4. Well, we did the math up here. That is actually going to be, well, first I have to find half of 2. Half of 2 is pretty easy. That's 1. Half of the fraction is 3/8. So that measurement's really 1 and 3/8. Same thing over here, it's the same number, 1 and 3/8. And then 2, you do the same thing. Half of 2 is 1, half of a half is 1/4, 1 and 1/4. So we're going to do that on all these dimensions. So let's go down here and do that too. 2.75, half of that, we just did the math up here, is 1 and 3/8. Same thing over here. A lot of these dimensions are repeating. You're going to find out why in a little bit if you haven't figured it out already. So I'm just going to go through here real quickly. You can follow along. I'm going to cut all of these in half. Now this is a tricky one. 3 1/2. Half of 3 is 1 1/2. Half of a half is 1/4. So we need to add those together, 1 3/4. So 1 3/4, not 3 1/2. Now the reason I want you to write all this stuff down is I don't want you to get confused when you go to actually draw this. I don't want you accidentally trying to make something 8 inches long when it should only be 4 inches long. That is why drawing to scale is so difficult. It gets very confusing and you need to be kind of on your guard about it. Now here's another tricky one. 1 1/2. Half of 1 is a half. Half of a half is 1/4. Add those together, we get 3/4. Half of 4 is 2. Over here again is 3/4. Over here again is 3/4. This is just making our job easier later on. I know it's kind of a pain to go through and do all the math, but it's important that we get this done. Same thing over here. Half of 1 1/2, again, is 3/4. 3 1/2, we already did that over here. 1 3/4. Hopefully you can see that. Sorry if I'm out of frame. Half of a half is 1/4. Half of 5, if you don't know, is 2 1/2. All right, so we have all these dimensions changed. I know it looks messy, but we're not going to do that on your drawing. That's just for our reference so we don't get confused. Let's move on to the drawing. As you see here, you should have this part already. This is a title block divided into 4. Each of these views is going to be in one of these boxes. 3 views, 3 boxes. We won't use this box here. However, we have an extra step involved. Each of these need to be in the center of their boxes. So this kind of is rough, but we need to make an X and Y axis in each of these guys here. I know, it's not fun. So let's measure this again, kind of as a review. We'll start down here. We're going to focus on the front view first. The front view is our base view. This is the one that all the other views are going to be based off of. This is the important one. So this box is 5 1/2 inches long. So we need to figure out what half of 5 1/2 is. Well, half of 5, do this on the back of the drawing, half of 5 is 2 1/2. Half of a half is 1/4. Add those together, 2 3/4. So we're going to measure that out here. 1, 2, 2 3/4. Make sure you don't put 2 1/2. A lot of kids make that mistake. So we're going to line up our T-square, break out this drafting square, and thankfully these 2 boxes are lined up perfectly, so we can just transfer that line up to this box as well. Get used to that idea. We're going to be transferring a lot of lines in this drawing. So we'll do that over here as well. Measure 2 3/4 off to the side. 1, 2, 3/4. Make a mark. We're only using this box down here, so we'll only draw the line in this box. Just like that. All right, now, this is where things might get a little tricky too. Our boxes are 3 3/4 inches tall. So let's do the math. Half of 3 is 1 1/2. Agreed? Agreed. Half of 3/4, well, if you multiply this bottom number by 2, if you double this number, you're going to find out that that is 3/8. Correct. So we're going to add these together. This is some math here, so you got to be careful with what you're doing. I'm going to convert a half to eighths. So that's going to be 1 4/8. I'm going to add 3/8 to it. Remember, when you add fractions, you only add the top numbers. 7/8. So we need to measure 1 7/8 down. I know, we haven't done this yet, but I have faith in you. So on our ruler, if you can see this, hopefully you can, the 7/8 is halfway between 3/4 and the next inch. Remember that, that's important, halfway between 3/4 and an inch. So we're going to go ahead and measure this starting on the bottom. We're going to make it a little easy. We'll start on the bottom here, if I can fit my T-square on this paper. Alright, line up the 0 with the bottom here. 1, this is 1 1/2, this is 1 3/4. We got to find the halfway point here, and that's 1 7/8. Right there. Take your time with this part. You don't want to mess that up. You're measuring 1 7/8 from the bottom, and then we're going to turn that into a line going clear across. Just like that. We'll do the same over here, in case you missed it. We'll measure from the bottom again, since that's easier to see. Line up the 0, pretend this is the bottom. We're going to line up the 0. 1, this is 1 1/2, this is 1 3/4. This halfway point right here is 1 7/8. That's where our mark goes. So we're going to line up. Remember, in case you forgot, you always put the T-square on the left side of the board. Line it up with the mark. Draw it across. There we go. Now all 3 of our view windows, make sure it looks good on the camera. All 3 of our view windows have their own little X and Y axes. Axi. Whatever the plural for axis is. Alright. Now, oh, I made a mistake on one of these. I'm sorry. Half of 2 1/2 isn't 2 1/4. It's 1 1/4. My bad. Sorry about that. All right, let's get started on this view right here. We're going to do this view right here. All right. So we're going to pretend this is a big old rectangle again. We'll draw these in, pretend that these are here. Kind of help us visualize what we're drawing. So if you notice on here, on this particular side, I don't have the dimension for the full width on this. I'm sorry, you might not be able to see that. I don't have the dimension for the full width on this view. Make sure you look around though, because I might have it on a different view. So on this view here, we see that the whole plate is 4 inches wide. Let's draw those lines first. So along our x-axis here, I'm going to put 2 marks that are 4 inches apart. Now, if you remember right, half of 4 is 2. At least I hope you remember that. Line up the 0 with the middle. 1, 2. Leave a mark. Same thing over here. Gonna line up the 2 with the middle. Mark it off at 0. That's the width of our plate. Check it out. Now let's look for the height. Again, I don't have the entire height listed on this view, so we got to look at another view. The height here was 5 inches. We cut it in half to 2 1/2. So we need to split 2 1/2 evenly across our y-axis. Split 2 1/2. So half of 2 is 1. Half of a half is a quarter. Ta-da. So we need to measure 1 1/4 above the x-axis, 1 1/4 below the x-axis. These are kind of small measurements, so I'm going to use my scale. You'll have to find 1 1/4 on your scale as well. So I'm going to line up my 0. Just like that. Oh, slipped a little bit. There's 1. There's 1 1/4. So I'm going to draw out 1 1/4 right here. We do the same thing on the bottom. Line up my 0. There's 1. There's 1 1/4. So now I have the measurements for our rectangle. Let's go ahead and draw those lines. T-square on the left-hand side. Line it up with your mark. Draw a line. Line it up with your mark. Make sure it's lined up. Draw a line. We need to draw some vertical lines, so I'm going to recruit my drafting square. Line it up on the T-square. And I'm going to draw myself a vertical line here. And a vertical line over here. Now, we're getting a lot of lines on this page right here. So what I'm going to do is, this is especially a good time to erase the unnecessary lines. And in this case, we just need this rectangle. The less lines you have confusing you, the better. That's what I believe. We'll get rid of all these extra lines. So we're just left with our rectangle. Alright, the drawing itself is pretty simple. We have a couple corners cut off here and we have 3 holes. So let's focus on the corners. As we can see here, let's mark off these corners. We can assume these corners are the same height from these corners because there's nothing that tells us different. Nothing that tells us different. So, these corners are 1 3/4 inches. Well, actually, they're 3.5 inches above the bottom. But on our drawing, they're going to be 1 3/4. Don't get confused with the scale. That's why we don't use these measurements right now. 1 3/4 from the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that. And thanks to the T-square, I only need to measure one side because I'll just transfer the mark across the plate after I mark it out. So we need it to be 1 3/4. So you see here, I'll use the T-square so you can see it better. Yeah. I'm going to line up 1 1/4, 1 2/4, 1 3/4. I'm going to line that up with the bottom edge here. And I'm going to mark out my 0. So that is 1, show it going this way so it makes more sense. 1 3/4. Don't feel bad if this drawing confuses or frustrates you. It's a difficult drawing. So I have that mark there. Now, you might think you have to measure over here as well, but I'm going to save you some time. If you just line up your T-square with the mark you've already made, you can just transfer that line over here. Easy peasy. Just like that. Now we have them both marked out. If you're in my class doing this, don't be afraid to ask the real me for help. I get it if this is all kind of moving really fast for you. So, we have those corners marked out. Now we need to focus on these corners. In real life, these corners would be 2 3/4 inches from the outer edges. But we got this scale here. So they're only going to be 1 3/8. Let's measure it. Line up to 0 with that corner. Now 1 3/8, the 3/8 mark is halfway between 1/4 and 1/2. So that's 1 3/8 right there. 1, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8. Do the same on the other side. Line up to 0, 1, 1 1/8, 1 1/4, 1 3/8. Make yourself a mark. Just like that. Now that we have that marked out, this is a lot like that first drawing we did. We can go ahead and connect the lines. Connect the dots together. Draw the lines. There's 1. There's 2. Just like that. And the fun thing is, if you're not sure if you got it right, measure this middle line. This middle line should be 1 1/4 inches long. That's what I was doing there, kind of secretly, making sure I got this right, is 1 1/4. So we're good. Again, the less lines we have at one time, the better. So I'm going to erase these corners, make them go away, because I don't want to get confused by unnecessary lines. Okay, there's 1. Thumb. There we go. They're gone. So now we have the basic outline done. Let's focus on these 3 holes. Now, looking at this hole looks like it's in the middle of the plate, but we can't be sure unless we look at the measurements. So let's do that right now. We have already established that, so in this drawing, this whole plate's gonna be 4 inches across. So we need to make sure this circle's in the middle. Well, it's 2 inches from the edge. 2 times 2 is 4. We know it's in the middle going this way. Now we need to see if it's going this way. We've established that on this drawing, our height of this plate is 2 1/2. Half of 2 1/2 we've already decided is 1 1/4. Well, this circle is 1 1/4 from the bottom. There you have it. This entire circle is right in the middle of this plate. Well, that makes it easy. We don't have to draw anything because we already have our x-axis, x and y-axis marked out. That's going to be the center of our circle. The diameter of the circle in real life would be 2 1/2 inches, but on this drawing it's going to be 1 1/4. So let's look for 1 1/4 on our stencil. See, there's 1 1/2. There's 1 3/8. There's 1 1/4. This circle right here is 1 1/4. So we're going to line up our tick marks with our circle. Sorry if you can see my head in the shot. You might not be able to though. If it's there, I'm sorry. Line that up. I'm going to trace that circle. And there it is. 1 circle down, 2 to go. I want to focus on how high these circles are from the bottom first. That's going to be the easiest thing. We've established, if you can see, that these circles are 3/4 inches from the bottom. So I'm going to mark that out first. I'm going to use my scale. And I'm going to measure out 3/4 of an inch. I'll use the T-square again so you can see this easier. I'm going to mark out 3/4 of an inch. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. Make your mark. Now, since both of these circles are the same height, we don't need to measure twice. Just like these marks here, we can just measure across. So I'm going to draw a small line here. Doesn't matter how long, and a small line here. There we go. Those are 3/4 inches from the bottom. I'm going to double check because it never hurts to double check. Yep, we're good. Alright, so we were looking and we decided that this circle, let me make sure this looks okay in the video camera. Yep, we're good. These 2 circles are 3/4 inches from the bottom. So we're going to measure that. Oh, wait, we're going from the side. Sorry about that. These circles are 3/4 inches from the sides. So we're going to measure that real quick. We'll measure it along the lines we just drew. Line up the 0 with the edge. Always make sure you line up the 0. Never line up just the edge of the T-square. Make sure you're lining up that 0. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. Draw a line. Same thing on the other side. Line up to 0. 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. Line. All right, let's draw our vertical lines for that circle. Got a lot of circles going on here. There's 1. There's 2. Now we can draw the circles. According to this drawing, the circles in real life would be 1 inch, but the scale, it's only 1/2 inch. So let's find that circle on this stencil. Let's see, there's 5/8, 9/32, 9/16. There's a 1/2 right there. This circle right here is a 1/2. So we're going to line that up with this drawing here. Scooch it over. Make sure all the tick marks are lined up so it's right in the center. Draw a circle. Whoop. Do the same thing over here. Line up the tick marks. That looks pretty good. Draw a circle. Whoop. All right. So in all argument's sake, this drawing is pretty much done. Now we got to focus on the other 2 views. Now, somebody always wants to try to just treat these like completely separate drawings, you know, make a rectangle, measure out all the lines. That's not necessary. And it might get you into trouble. You might get the drawings not lined up correctly. These drawings are perfectly in line with each other, so we barely have to measure anything. Let's start with this right view right here. So hopefully you can see that in the top corner. Yep. All right, I'm going to start with the top and bottom lines. This is really easy, guys. I'm going to take my T-square, left-hand side. I'm going to line up the top and bottom lines of this drawing. I'm going to line up the T-square to them. And I'm just going to draw lines over here in the middle of the paper. There's one there. Line up this guy. There's one there. So now I have the top and bottom completely done, and it is the same height as this drawing here. The only thing I got to measure is the width and make these vertical lines. The width in real life would be 1/2 inch. In this drawing, it's 1/4 inch. So what's 1/2 of 1/4? Well, double up the 4. 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8. So I'm going to take my T-square, or your scale. I'm going to line up the 0. I'm going to draw an 1/8 on this side. And I'm going to draw an 1/8 on that side. Get my drafting square. Draw those vertical lines. And look at that. Use my eraser shield to get them cleaned up. Just like that. Now I have that general outline done. Now one thing I'm going to do while I'm at it is I'm going to get rid of these middle lines because they're only going to be harder to erase later. So feel free to get rid of these right now because you've done all the measuring you need to do off of them. So I'm going to get rid of those right now. I'm going to completely clean up this, get rid of those lines right there. So we just have nice, clean lines to go off of. So much erasing. All right. That's about as good as it'll get. These aren't very good erasers. All right, now we have a couple lines we need to draw here. You'll notice on your drawing that some of these are not solid lines. These are what we call hidden lines. Hidden lines, so this view is if I took that plate, like for example, pretend this eraser shield is this plate. If I took this plate and I turned it sideways, looked at it this way. If you turn this plate sideways, you would not see these holes in the side of the plate. But in the drawing, we want to know that these holes are here. Mostly we want to know that so that we know they go completely through the plate. On here, you can't tell how deep these holes are. They might only go just a little bit into the plate, but they actually go all the way through, as seen in this, what's called an isometric drawing. That's another vocab word for you we'll talk about in class. Isometric view drawing. So, these hidden lines, that's basically what they are. They're lines that exist, but they're hidden inside the plate. And if you notice, if I take my ruler here and I line it up, they line up with the top and bottom of these holes. Just like that. So let's go ahead and draw those real quick. I'm going to line this up with the bottom of this circle right there. And I'm just going to take this guy and I'm going to do two little lines just to show that they're hidden. Just like that. I'm going to do the same thing with the top of these little circles. Just draw some nice little hidden lines. They're secret, they're hidden. Just like that. Boom. Hidden lines are in place. Now let's do the big circle. Gonna line up the bottom of this circle. And those lines are gonna be pretty close together actually. Very close together. Just like that. Do the same thing up top here. Just like that. There's your hidden lines. Last thing we need to do on this drawing is we have a solid line right here. That solid line shows these corners, because if this was a real plate and you put this and you turned it to its side to look at it at the side features, you would see this corner because it's on the outside. So I'm going to line up my T-square with those corners again. I'm going to draw a nice object line going across. Just like that. That drawing's done. Completely done. Don't need to do anything else with it except erase the unnecessary lines. Goodbye, lines. None of these are necessary anymore. They can go away. Sorry about the shaking table. Alright. Now, let's focus on this top view right now. Can we still see it okay? Yep, we can. Top view is going to be the exact same thing. All of these vertical lines line up somewhere on here. So we can draw those in really easily. So I'm going to T-square on the left-hand side. I'm going to use my drafting square. I'm going to line it up with the outer edges of my plate. Line it up. And I'm going to do what they call, this actually has a name, it's called transferring lines. We're going to transfer these lines to the top of this drawing here. We're doing the top view. Just like that. Now this plate has the same thickness in the top view as the bottom. So we're going to have to draw an 1/8 inch going up and down to show that thickness. So we're going to take our T-square, line it up, 1/8 inch on the top, 1/8 inch on the bottom. On the bottom and the top in this case. Use our T-square, make those lines exist. Nope. Just like that. Then I'll use my eraser shield, clean some of these up. Very tempted right now to make some joke. Also, here's another function. This little slot here can make it so you only erase one line and not your other lines. See, I kind of erased this line a little bit. If you erase part of a line you don't want to erase, just go back and fill it in. I don't want to take points off of your drawing. It's not that hard. I don't like taking unnecessary points off. It makes me sad. Okay. We'll finish this up down here. Almost there. One more to go. And now just the top and bottoms. Gone. 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 It's about as good as it's going to get with this eraser. So, exact same thing. We're going to transfer these lines. These are the same hidden lines. The only reason we don't see hidden lines for this middle circle is because this middle circle lines up completely with these corner edges. So that's just going to be covered by these lines here. So we'll go ahead and transfer all these lines over. Line up the circle. It's a hidden line, so we're just going to do some hidden dashed lines there. We'll do both the circles first. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Just like that. Oh, did I forget one? I must have. My bad. 1 second. Alright, hidden lines. Then we just got to line up these edges. One there. One there. That's all there is to it. So, last thing we're going to do here before we fill in our information is we're going to erase all of these grid lines. We don't need them anymore. They were a reference point. We don't need that reference anymore. Get rid of them all, I say. While I'm doing this, I will like to say I'm sorry this video is so long. There's a lot of detail to cover in these things, and I hope you don't get too bored on it. But I'd rather you get a little bored than do your drawings wrong. Because with these drawings, accuracy is everything. So please make sure you watch these videos. That's why I put them up here, is to help you out. We keep the crosshairs in the circles. They can go out a little bit. Like I said, I don't really have a set distance for how far they can go out. Just like that. Okay. Last little section of line. Oh, there's one right up here. Now, if you were doing this professionally too, you would really want to make sure you draw your lines lightly and have a good eraser, because companies would not like seeing all these smudges on your drawings. Like I said, this eraser ain't the best, but it's good enough for what we're doing here. Last thing we're going to do is just darken our lines. If there's any lines that are uneven, just go through, darken them up, make them what they need to be. Just like that. All right, final step, fill in our information. So, today, well, let's start with the name. Make sure you write small. This is a long name. Positioning stop. Kind of a weird name. And anyone who thinks I make up these drawings, I'm going to tell you right now I don't. They came from textbooks. I'm not sure where they got the names. I already have my name here. The scale, 1/2, and the date. Let's see. Today is 09 the 13th, 2020. All right. That's the drawing. All that's left to do is dimension it, and we're going to do that in another video. Thank you for watching.